Dominus illuminatio mea. It seems that this liturgy, the one that starts with "The Lord is my light," comes from a time of persecution and would have taken form in the catacombs. There is a plea in the collect for the church to be allowed to live in tranquility. And the first reading talks about the pains of creation. But I want to zoom into the Gospel. The Church has seen this Gospel as a reference to the fact that Simon Peter is going to be important, and that this teaching from the boat is going to be handed over to the owner of the boat one day, and he will be fishing men. That, brethren, is our business. Fishing souls before they get to hell. Never forget that when it comes to anything else. Our business is the salvation of souls. That can sometimes actually be forgotten in the height of ministry, which can often, if we're honest, go into maintenance and administration. Immortal souls. And by the way, no one can take the place of the priest in being close to an immortal soul. In the ministry of the sick, it's not enough to farm out that to lay people. A priest alone can absolve and anoint. It's not enough to give communion. That's not the sacrament that some people need most at that time. How do we fish? There are several ways, and by the way, we're all in this business. No one is excluded. The first is that of attraction, a witness, a lighthouse, a magnet, an advert for Christ by our radiation and warmth. Another is our prayer. Now, if it's devotional prayer, it needs to be the best and not automatic pilot or something worse. People pick it up. Are we praying or not? Then, liturgical prayer. That matters. In Ireland, unfortunately, we've got used to a bad norm. I think you know what I mean. And by the way, there's an overlap, because the speed of the rosary, which is already maximal, has become, over the centuries, the speed of the liturgy itself. But there are others too. One is our word. Therefore, if you're in a situation where a word of yours can have an effect, don't pass it by. That does not mean you have to be a heavyweight and, like some born-again Christians, always be talking about certain things to the point of annoyance when you're not wanted in that situation. But having that openness to see, well, here actually is a space where I'm being invited to say something, and that is different. It can happen in any conversation. And for that to happen with fruit, one needs to be well prepared, knowing how to talk logically, calmly about what you believe and why. Because you're on the winning side. Truth is on your side. Therefore, you don't raise your voice or appeal to anything else but the power of truth itself. For if it is held before the person's eyes, clearly, logically, calmly, and with lucidity, it will do its own work. For the truth knows well how to defend itself. If one does something else at that point, it means you're getting nervous and you're betraying yourself. There's far more conviction in the calm serenity of a self-possessed speaker who knows exactly what he's saying and why. Another is the word which is written. Therefore, that word that you say might not have to be actually your own. You might be prompted by the Holy Ghost to know precisely what is available easily that can do the work for you. I make a little parenthesis here, and I'll come back to the theme in a second. That is hugely important. I mentioned St. Peter and his little ship. In school days, when still an evangelical, the open Catholic Church, nearly opposite our school, was a massive influence because it was open, which allowed even a Protestant to sense something there. I think you know what I mean. But also, notice, because at the back of it, there was a rack, a CTS rack. The church was that of St. Peter, and the big stained glass window at the apse was the Lord sitting in the boat teaching. One day, when still a Protestant, I drifted into that church. It was actually in the early hours of the morning, on the way to an evangelical prayer meeting before school. We had it twice a week. Wow! There was a huge celebration happening at that time in the morning, and there was even singing going on. And I thought to myself, that's a big difference. An open, living church at all hours. I started to drift back in the early hours before class. And you know what I found? There was always prayer going on there. I found that there was Mass after Mass being celebrated, either on the main altar or on the lady altar on the left, because there were a lot of priests in that community. Was minions. And that hit me. There's something here which we haven't got, even remotely. There's no huge evangelization going on, but God is there, speaking, radiating. A little later on, down the line, a couple of years later, I was getting to the brink. Is this the true church? And I wanted a sign. I drifted into that church in the lunch hour, wanting a sign. Do you know what happened? Something prompted me to go to the CTS rack. Now, this rack is always in the Catholic Church in England and Wales. It's run by the Catholic Truth Society, and they have tracts and pamphlets and booklets. And I just picked up one which hit me because it was about a boy of my age, Dominic Savio. And the title was The Schoolboy Saint. I opened it at random and got to a point where it said this. The boy had a vision. He saw a great field full of dark, heavy mist. And at a certain point he saw a pontiff coming with a lantern in his hand. Where the lantern went, the mist and the dark was dispelled. He was given to understand that it was referring to England. The Roman Catholic hierarchy was about to be re-established in that Anglican country. And he gave it to St. John Bosco, his spiritual father, before he died. That hit me. I was in that mist, I was in that dark, and he was a boy of my own age telling me from the Lord, the Pope has the lantern. That was no raising of the voice. There was no quarrel. The Lord himself knew in his providence how to put in the right place at the right time and to put in contact with the right word at the right moment. You can do the same. So I turn back now to where I left. Another means is knowing how to point out, now in our day, not just books, but the whole plethora of modern communications. CDs about Eucharistic miracles and so on, cassettes of great teachers and preachers, and now the whole realm of YouTube. Knowing how to manipulate, to know, maneuver what's out there, because that is the library of modern man. Man now is actually watching a screen and reading on screen as much, if not more, than the old books. So we have to be up to date with the means that the Lord is giving us. Pope Benedict wanted that we be in there. Otherwise, what will happen? What happened years ago when Christians were saying, why should the devil have all the best music? I conclude. I had a friend. He would come with me sometimes to pray in that church. The only problem was that he had huge anchors in the big Anglican scene. Father, grandfather, all Anglican clergymen, and he was heading the same way. Very difficult to move. 6 years in Oxford, High Church, eventually ordained but invalidly. One day he took me, when I was staying with him in Oxford, to various places of the whole Oxford movement, which, remember, became so Catholic that many came over, including the great Newman himself. So, in Pusey House, I was listening to what was going on between them. He was talking to the provost, Chesley Jones, and I just listened to what they had to say. The provost said to Paul, "Whoa, the Anglican Church is a zoo in which every animal can do his own thing, as long as he doesn't get in the way of the animal in the cage next to him." Indeed, I thought, out of the horse's mouth. That means that Newman got it right when he saw, 1 minute after making the decision, all that he had had hitherto was in a human institution. So I go back to where I started at the beginning. The Catholic Church, even in persecution, even in the worst of persecution here in Ireland and in England, in the catacombs, was the only one that had the Lord's positive will. So we can't love Jesus unless we want his will. And that means, Lord, whatever you want, I will do. And that, young men and women, can actually mean more than you think. Because that same altar was saying, come, follow me.
proptes nostre salutăm, mișe